Heard about your hire, but hadn't met you yet. So Bill will tell you, I'm one of the ward council.
But in a good way. We get
In
a
a
lot,
good way.
we get a lot done. Patient us.
I try. Yeah, so so I represent Ward 4. This is my first term, so. Uh-huh. Put a face to the
That
name.
is, I'm gonna look at that sign. Barking an arrow back to Ed. I don't know why it was there,
Well,
except
Seems quiet.
I know.
there's no parking
and,
further up in front
yeah,
of
she's
the
a sweetheart.
field.
Sure, I
5 no parking
make a point
signs
to
in front
introduce
of the
myself,
ball
so.
field,
Welcome.
but it's not enforced.
They do, they
In
do.
front of this guy's house.
They're a great
it's just
group
that
of folks to
one
have,
house.
so. Welcome.
Thank you.
I don't know if couldn't see coming out of Edbert, and they were, it's just. Sometimes they'll send us a draft. I don't have most of the paper on my desk. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Committee on Ordinance for Tuesday, October 27th. The members present are myself, I'm the chairwoman, Rebecca Lisi. To my left, we have Counselor for Ward 7, Gordon Alexander. And then to my right, Counselor for Ward 3, Counselor David Bartley. And in the audience this evening, we have Counselor at Large, Joe McGivern, as well as Ward 4 City Councilor Josie Valentin, and the Ward 1 City Councilor Gladys LeBron Martinez. Is there a motion to take up item number 1?
So moved. Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to go on to item number 1. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. This is a flea market application for David Roman at 642 Summer Street in Holyoke. Under discussion, we tabled this last time because we did not have a plan submitted or a letter from the planning department that reviewed the plans. They have since been forwarded to us, as well as a letter from the planning department. And some of the brief comments that the planning department makes are as follows. They've reviewed the site plan submitted, although the plans are, let's just see right here, where is it? They're not to scale, but they're reasonably drawn, reasonably dimensioned. So they think that that's a good enough plan to work with for this evening. And then a couple of comments that they make are regarding the zoning designation for flea market use on this site. Number 1, vehicular access to the proposed site does not access directly from a residential street. While Jackson Street is not residential in South Holyoke, it does act as a major connector for Canal Street, Main Street, High Street, and the off-ramp for I-391. The committee may wish to consider options for traffic control on Jackson Street at the intersections of the driveways to the proposed location, and vehicular parking on Jackson Street and South Summer Street to include signage, painted crosswalks, or other traffic control measures. 2, overnight lodging on the premise is not allowed, even if such lodging is free to booth operators. 3, with an IG zoning designation, section 5.2, table of dimensional regulations, there is no setback requirements. Section 6.13, form of parking space setbacks states that where required off-street parking space is in the form of a parking lot or other open-air parking space, it shall not be located within 5 feet of a street or within 5 feet of any other lot line. As drawn, there is a 5 feet buffer around the perimeter. There are no residential zones within 300 feet of the associated parcels. 5, by zoning ordinance, section 6.1, table of off-street parking standards, the proposed project will require 1 space for every 150 square feet of gross floor area. The applicant states that the space to be leased for the proposed use is 250 by 45 feet, therefore 11,250 square feet, making 75 spaces required. We also require that aisle drives shall not be less than 14 feet in width. Parking lot improvements may be made, including paving and striping. And as drawn, the parking lot has vehicular directional arrows. So how will they be enforced? And they also want us to note that this is a proposed use within a large multi-tenant building complex. The committee may wish to ask about the parking requirements and seek a parking plan for the entire site in the event that other spaces within the complex are occupied and have similar hours. Okay. So with that, we also have the applicant here this evening, Mr. Roman, as well as the property owner, Mr. Dooley. Thanks. Just for the record, will you state your name and address, Mr. Roman?
David Roman, 23 Lamb Street, South Hadley.
Great.
Massachusetts.
Thank you. And so do you want to brief us on what the project is expected to look like at this site? We have the plans in front of us. We see the site. I think we did a count of 124 vendors, or, I'm sorry, 57?
57, I think, booths.
57 booths. But the maximum capacity for the building is 124 people. So could you just walk us through what you think a typical day of business would be like here for you?
Yeah, it's gonna be like 57 vendors, and people gonna be walking around all day. So I'm not sure how many people gonna show up, but maximum capacity gonna be 124 people inside the building that moment.
So if you, excuse me, do you mind if I jump in? If you've got 57 vendors, does that mean 57 independent, each booth has somebody standing at the booth?
Yeah,
Okay, so then your max capacity is 124 less 57 in terms of customer traffic, roughly 60 people at any one time coming through
Yeah.
shopping. Does that work? Does that,
you're gonna be a small.
or if you don't get 100 people in there, it's like, oh my God, this business doesn't make sense. I'm just trying to get a feel for the load.
Yeah, but it's not. Like I'm saying, it's not all people on the same moment. People buy and go. That's the way it is.
Sure, so if you've got 30 people walking around at
Yeah.
any one time, that's good, things are going fine?
Yeah, it's not gonna be a big flea market for now.
Okay.
The only thing I noticed on the application that was.
I just need you to come to the microphone and state your name and
Hi,
address
my
for
name
the
is
record.
Christopher Dooley. I live in Chicopee. I co-own 642 Sesame Street.
Thank you.
The only thing I want to interject is that the space he's going to be renting is 10,000 square feet, not the 1,100, whatever that was on the application. So that's one issue that's a little bit off.
Yeah, we saw that in the, so, because we don't have dimensions on the map, but we do have feet, right?
So it is 45, 50. According to the dimensions, I'm sorry. According to the measurements listed here, it's 45 by 250. You're saying the 45 doesn't have any wiggle room. Is the 250 wrong?
I think that the 250 might be off a little bit. I'm not certain. I know it's 10,000 square feet for certain.
Okay. You're probably going to be missing a booth or two then. You're not going to be able to cram the same size. X number of pegs fit in only X number of holes. But if it's a little bit smaller, it's a little bit smaller. I don't think that impacts, it'll impact your maximum capacity, but it'll impact your number of booths too. But you'll find that out when you go to put the booths up. So,
I'll take a measure, and that's the side you give me, the measure.
So, it just brings down the parking requirements a little bit. Hold on.
10,000 on 150?
Yep. To 67. Yeah.
So that's a little bit better. So, can you mind if I just
Keep going,
continue going? I'm sorry. I thank you guys for coming down. I'm sorry I didn't say that out loud before. And as far as the mic goes, the point is that this is broadcast on TV for people who might be interested at home, and they can't hear a word unless you speak into the microphone. So it's not that we can't hear you, we can. People on the audience can't hear you. You've got on the plan here 75 spaces, less a few for handicap. Your parking requirement, if it's only 10,000 square feet, is 67 spaces, so you've got a couple extra, that's great. Where are the 57 vendors parking during business hours?
Gonna be in the back of the building. I speak with the owner. That's what he told me. I
So
could park
is there
somewhere
another
there.
parking lot that's not on this? Help me out.
It's not something we've come to a complete agreement upon having vendors park in the back of the building. Yep. Because there's other business vehicles parked back there or tractor trailers, so there's limited space in the back there.
Okay, I guess my point is, if they're not able to park elsewhere, wherever elsewhere is, and they need to park here, then you just used up 57 out of your 67 spaces for the vendors. You've got 10 spaces left for customers, and 5 of those are for handicapped people. So you're not leaving yourself a lot of room. So are you guys working to address that? I mean, That doesn't seem viable to me, so I'm trying to understand what your solution is.
Yeah, when I speak with the owner, he got,
Who's standing right there, right?
when I speak with the owner, he say he got a ramp behind the building. We can park in there too, you know. So it's a big ramp back there. We can park customers down there or vendors.
So it seems that what Mr. Dooley said is that it's not 100% in agreement that you have access to that space, and we also need to hear what would the maximum offset that of that space be? What's the maximum offset that that space would provide for the vendors? How many spaces might you be allowed to utilize back there if you were able to utilize that space?
Around the building, I think it's like 25, 30 parking.
And we have the business owner, the property owner here, right? So we,
I mean, there are about that many spaces around the entire block, but around the building itself, there are other people who park in that area on Sundays on occasion. It's not consistent, but there's spaces that have cars in them on occasion on Sunday. They're not always available.
so we could say if there's 25 spaces, maybe 15 could regularly be available back there? And if they're at least available, they will have access to those spaces, or is that going to be a condition of the lease?
It's questionable. During the cold weather months with winter, with snow removal, vehicles in the back area are generally parked back there throughout the weekend, and there's very limited space back there for parking.
Okay, Councilor Alexander.
Thanks. So, look, we're trying to get, at least I'm trying to get to a yes here. I'm trying to just have you to collectively, owner, yes, and
Yeah.
lessor, help me get to where this makes sense, okay? You've met the zoning requirement. If you're down to 67 spaces, 10,000 square feet, you need 67 spaces. You've shown a plan that will barely squeak by because actually you've drawn your plan with the spaces smaller than the zoning requires, so you've got more spaces than you're physically going to get. But even with that, if it's only 10,000 square feet, 67 spaces, this will probably scale down to about 67 spaces. I'm okay with that. But just from a business operation perspective, I want to be sure that this is going to make sense. If you've got 57 pickup trucks that you need to do something with, and you're expecting 30, 35 customers on site at any given moment, then you need 57 plus 30 or 35, 97, 102, 103 spaces between the vendors and the customers. You need someplace to put them. So between the owner and the lessor, I'd like to hear, yeah, we've got some plan in place beyond just the letter of the law here to accommodate roughly 102, 103 vehicles. So help me out.
Yeah, the thing is, when I make the deal with his father. He's not there, so that's why I probably.
But even if you utilize the 15 or so spaces in the back, and you have 70 spaces on the side lot, that's only bringing you to 85 spaces. So 57 of those spaces are going to be used for your vendors, and then you have less than 30 spaces remaining for customers. So, and that's if you are utilizing the space in the back, which may be covered with snow at times. So it's just really unclear how you're projecting the plan to be viable if you have less than 30 spaces available for customer parking on any given day that you're in operation.
I know the back, maybe we can feed 25, 30 cars back there. So something I got to talk to the owner and see.
I think this is going to be a sticking point for us this evening, because not only is it so you meet the requirements. If there are 70 spaces, if we adjust the height that's on this plan to 9 feet instead of the 8.5 feet, you probably 67, 70 spaces, which meets the requirement of the law. But then what our question is if you have 57 vendors, 67 spaces, there's at least 10 spaces that you're guaranteed access to, and the other 10, 15, up to 20 are not guaranteed. And we had the property owner here this evening saying that the spaces may be utilized for other things at other times. There are multiple tenants on this building complex, and it seems that they also have access to that back lot. So I think we're working to hear about how this makes sense for you as from a business perspective. So what would you expect a good day of business to include in terms of how much foot traffic do you expect in a day? Because if it's 30 for the day in the however many hours there, then you'll have 10 spaces that you could roll over, and 10 spaces and 10 spaces, roll them over 3 times, maybe that makes sense. But if you want 30 people rolling around an hour, that means you need more like 90 spaces.
There is people, coming and leave. Those people not be there the whole day,
Are you talking about the vendors, or are you talking about the
customers.
the customers?
Yeah. People walking around and leave. That's the way it is,
Let me try this again. How many customers at any given moment do you anticipate realistically? What's a normal sounding number? How many customers in the building?
Around 50.
50.
Yeah.
So is that
That's
50? Is that 50 vehicles?
Depends how many people come in the car,
Of course
I'm
it
not
does.
sure.
I'm asking you, what in your opinion of your business, are you expecting 50 individuals in different cars? Are you expecting most of those are couples, so maybe you're looking at 25, 30 cars? Somewhere in between, you need 40 cars?
It's between 25, 30 cars.
So 30 cars, okay. So you've got 57 booths, 57 pickup trucks. Then you've got 30 more cars. 67, 77, 87 is your realistic, from what you're saying, you need space for 87 vehicles. The numbers you're giving me is 87 vehicles.
Yeah, probably.
You've got 67 here. I've got the landlord here saying he's not sure if you can have 20 in back. So until you guys iron that out, I'm having a hard time seeing how you're going to operate without having cars parked all over the street, which you're not allowed to do. So, yeah, but I mean, we need a viable plan that'll get us past that point, okay? So from my point of view, what I'm hearing is you two, or him and your dad, or whoever it needs to be, need to sit down and come up with a solution. And if the solution is, your vendors are only allowed to load and unload, and then they need to take their vehicle off site, that's fine. That's a solution. But you need some kind of a solution that says you've got more paved parking than you need to run the business. Okay?
What I try to do is put the vendor behind the building. That's what I want. And leave
But you've got the
parking.
landlord sitting here saying that may not work. So until you guys resolve that, I'm not hearing there's room for 60 cars back here, and that's what you need to put all the vendors back there. So you just have to figure it out. Nobody here is saying no. We're just saying, show us how it's going to work so that we can say yes.
All right.
Okay?
Councilor Bartley is in queue, but what I want to do is just read, the landowner has submitted a letter that says, the 8 Sutton Avenue Nominee Trust is in support of David Roman's plan to develop a weekly Sunday flea market in the second floor space of 642 South Summer Street in Holyoke. We feel that David has done sufficient research for his project and is working with the city to move forward to get this project off the ground. We as landlords are working with David to ensure this project can come together and operate in our building. And this is from Chris Dooley. Is this you, Chris, or is this your father?
That is me.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to read that into the record. So, and like you're generally in support of,
I spoke with Jeff Burkott, the city planner, and there are measures that the city would probably like us to take as landlords to improve the parking conditions, like paving the lot, and those aren't things we're able to do as a business. So it's unfortunate. There's certain things that are falling on us as landlords that we're not able to do with this circumstance. We're going to try to work with David to try to figure out a parking plan where all the vendors and the customers will be able to park. But ultimately, I'm not certain if there's going to be 80.
Well, can I
Yeah.
just, okay. Okay, so these are great questions that they're being asked. I'm going to take a different take. I have a different take on it, Chris and David, than what my fellow counselors have on this. Okay, so first of all, it's Sunday, and you're open if Sunday all day, 4 to 5, 4 to 6. I'm not saying I know that area as well as you do, but I know it well enough to know that there is not a lot of vehicular traffic in that area on Sundays, other than what you're going to bring in. So my guess is that there's probably on-street parking that perhaps that you can have you can direct your vendors to after they drop off whatever they need to drop off. They can move their vehicles to an on-street parking spot. It may not be right next to the building. They may have to walk a couple blocks, but it gets them out of the way and it clears the parking lot. So that would be a solution. Everybody doesn't have to be congregated with their cars adjacent to the facility. It sounds nice, but the reality is that that's not gonna work. So Chris, you know the area much better than me, so I would suggest you could come up with some sort of a plan, so Dave's vendors could go, after they drop off, they could go park their trucks and vehicles a block or two away at worst, and I think they're gonna be satisfied, and that frees up a lot of the spaces. I think I'm more interested in the condition of the parking lot. I'd be shocked if Mr. Burkott required you to pave this. I mean, that would just be an enormous expense. I don't think, however, Chris, that it's unreasonable for somebody to require that you stripe it or chalk it. Okay, I don't think that's unreasonable. So you're saying here with this beautiful little plan you came up with, which is great, I commend you, but this is a huge parking lot, and to pave that would be a $100,000 bill, and you're not gonna see a return on that anytime soon. But chalking it and making sure that it's kind of laid out equivalent, not, perfectly, but more or less equivalent to what you laid out, I mean, is that a reasonable demand? You tell me.
That sounds like something that's feasible. It's just something that we'll just have to, the entire lot right now isn't actually cleared out. That's another thing that we still have to work on as property owners. There's still some grass and debris and stuff, so we have to clear the entire space out for the amount of vehicles that will be needed for Sunday.
And is that something you want to do? Is that something you can do?
It's something we'll be able to do.
Okay, okay. Now, the problem with this is City Council generally meets the first and third Tuesday, except for November. We waived our rule, so we're not meeting on the first Tuesday in November, because guess what, folks? What is that? Thank you, that's Election Day. So we're not here next Tuesday, gentlemen. So I'm trying to come up with a way so we can get this out of committee, and you guys can get a game plan to us for when we meet subsequent to that, which is the 17th of November.
No, the 10th. We would meet as ordinance on the 10th.
We meet as ordinance to the 10th. Okay, well, there you go. So we won't meet again until the 17th as a full city council. I was thinking of that, Madam Chair. So that's not a bad point. So if we have some additional questions, we still have a meeting on the 10th before the full city council will meet anyhow. Does that make sense, guys? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we can't decide anything tonight, and we can't decide anything next week because we're not meeting. But if we continue this to the 10th, maybe maybe you have a little better. I mean, I think Gordon's questions are excellent, but there's got to be, so a little more thought has to be put in. So if you would consider that, and just my other comments. And then just on the one thing, David, on your original app, when we were going to 60 Jackson, I think you said strike that. You said you had different hours. I think you said 6 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., and I saw in this application 5. What do you want for hours? I guess.
Yeah, 5 only Sundays because these people using the parking. Sundays 5 to 4:30.
Okay, open to the public 5 a.m. to 4:30.
To the public 6 o'clock to 4 o'clock.
The vendors to load. That's why.
Okay, so vendors. I think I saw in here that vendors could come in at 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
I think I saw that, and it's open to the public 6 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Yeah.
6 a.m. to 4 p.m. Okay, we're all on the same page, because that'll be a condition on the permit.
I saw one thing, some vendor gonna take, I got this Chinese guy, he wanna take 10 space, Some people take 2, 3, it depends. It's not gonna be 50 vendors.
Okay.
Some vendor take, a couple of spot. I got this Chinese, he want 10 spaces, In the parking, I'm gonna put some signs, and one guy gonna be in the parking, show people how you can park.
So Dave, I would just say this, if that's the case, when you come back assuming we continue to the 10th, I don't know what we're gonna do yet, but assuming we do, you might wanna come, because that was a question, that you have booths here for, I think it's 57 booths, thank you, Gordon. 57 booths. Well, how many operators? You know, in other words, you have one gentleman you just mentioned one operator is gonna be controlling 10 booths. So you might wanna give us some feedback as to how many actual vendors are gonna be operating the booths.
Okay,
Does that make sense? So we'll have a better feel for the number of vehicles.
okay. And, you know, the vendor not gonna park in that parking, because when I talk to the owner, we're gonna use the back ramp he got in the back over there. That's why I put somebody working back there, you know, like a security guy.
Okay, thank you.
So I just want to clarify a couple things here. Number one, Jeff Burkott from the planning department was just asking, are there going to be improvements made, such as paving or striping? So I don't think that it's a requirement by any means. It's always just nice to know, like, what's going on with the property moving forward. Striping would be really nice, and there was a recommendation that we also do some directional arrows on the pavement to, even once the grass is cleared, there's no pavement? It's a dirt lot.
But you can still put directional arrows on there. You can chalk them.
You can chalk them.
Yeah, you can, Chris, you can chalk those, right? There you go, yeah.
So right now, what I have before us is, I think we want to hear a more accurate projection of how many vendors are going to be there. If you're not going to fill up all 57 booths, how many vendors do you think would be in the space? Because that's going to determine how much parking you need. And then I think we want an additional letter from the property owner stating that you will have access to X many spots on that back lot, the one that's not drawn into the plan here, because that's going to help us get to that magic number for the parking requirements for not only the business but for the customers. And then finally, I think we'd like to have, I mean, at least I think in writing, something that says that the property owner will be committed to chalking and directional arrows on that lot. Are there other issues? You said that there's going to be somebody hired to help with the traffic flow
Yeah, I
as
got
well?
somebody to keep the traffic, you know, the parking clean. In case of an emergency, you know, people can walk in there.
I'm not sure if we would make that a condition, but it seems that it seems like a smart way to go, considering the traffic on, what is it, Jackson Street into this area. I think there was some recommendations against allowing on-street parking. So it says that we may wish to consider traffic control options on Jackson Street at the intersections of the driveways, and then vehicular parking on Jackson Street, including signage, painted crosswalks, or other traffic control measures. So I guess it doesn't say that we cannot allow parking on Jackson Street, but we should probably work to designate it in some way. Yep. So, anything else that the committee wants to see for the meeting that we'll have on the 10th? I think the most important thing is going to be the letter from the property owner talking about the number of spaces and access to that back lot. And then, Mr. Roman, I think you're going to just need to give us a better projection of how many vendors you think will actually be renting from you, as opposed to the 57 cells being rented.
Right now, I got 34 people waiting.
That's good. That's really good. 34. And out of if you have 34 people renting from you, do you have a sense of how many of the cells, the vendor cells, are utilized at this point?
I know the Chinese guy, he won 10 spot. Sometime. Yeah, and two more people, 1 5 and 2.
So you're,
Yeah,
so you're fully rented with 35 vendors,
yeah.
34 vendors. All right. Anything? Absolutely.
Just one quick question. Would you be okay with, you collectively, be okay with marking this lot here as customer parking only? And then the vendors fend for themselves, come in, unload, go park somewhere, wherever they go.
That's what I tried to tell you. That's what I want. You know, that's what
Okay,
I'm
so
gonna
if this is marked customer parking only,
exactly.
then from a practical point of view, I think that solves the parking issue. Because then the
Exactly.
vendors are, I don't care where they are, they're not here.
That's what I want to put somebody in there to do that. You know.
Okay. Thank you.
I think we would also want to designate with signage of some sort that it's customer parking only. Yeah. Counselor Bartley?
I mean, I don't know if there's any other vacant lots down there. Nothing really, okay, Chris, is there on-street parking available?
There is on-street parking on, there's some spots on South Summer Street, on Jackson Street, and, continuing up South Summer Street going towards the school, there's parking available.
Okay, so maybe when you have a moment in the next 2 weeks, you could sort of quantify that? Yeah. Thank you.
Counselor McGivern?
But there are residential buildings too.
Yeah.
You know, it's more commercial industrial, but there's 2 large buildings left over from the battleship, and there's the ball field about 2 blocks away, and the closer you get to the school, there's more residential housing.
Yeah, so I don't think that we could allow for off-street parking to be included in the, it would be nice to know and get a sense for what's out there, but I don't think that we can, allow it to count towards any of the numbers that we're looking for.
No, I'm not saying that, but I don't think we can demand them to have more than what the law is required. I think what Council Alexander was speaking, if I may, Gordon, speaking from a practical perspective. So, I mean, it's impractical if you have all these vendors filling the parking lot and there's no spaces for your customers. So I'm just trying to come up with some common sense ideas. That's all. Thank you.
And then finally, this project is on the 2nd floor. Is there somebody occupying the 1st floor at this point?
Yes, Valley Green is on the 1st floor, and Dirk Offerth has a wood shop on the 1st floor, so the 1st floor is occupied.
But customer traffic?
No, during the summer months, there's customer traffic in the back area where Mr. Roman would want people to park. That's more on Saturdays, but on occasion, there are people in the building on Sundays, but it's not consistent.
Okay. And Councilor Alexander, did you have a question as well?
No, that was my question.
Okay. Anything else from the committee? Other members of the council? Okay. So I think it's pretty clear at this point, we want something in writing saying, do you have access to that back lot? If so, how many spaces will you have access to back there? Also a commitment to the chalking of stripes and directional arrows. Yeah, and so traffic flow would come under the chalking, signage for customer parking only, and entrance egress. Okay,
So motion to continue to 10th?
yes. Motion has been made and seconded to continue this public hearing to November 10th at 6:30 p.m. All in favor?
All right.
So moved.
Madam Chair, just a point of order. We've got,
Thank you.
we just have a couple of counselors here, so but do all these orders, Madam Chair, require the assistance of the TPW Superintendent and City Engineer? I mean, for example, 10, Counselor Valentin has an order on there. I see Counselor LeBron Martinez has 12, 13, and 6.
So all of these are traffic-related
Okay.
items, so
Thank
we
you.
will have, Yem and Bill come in for this portion of the meeting, and then I think since you noted correctly, Counselor Valentin is here with residents from her neighborhood regarding one order. We could start there. Sure. So Bill and Yem, do you want to come in?
Motion to proceed out of order, take up item number 10.
Second.
Motion was made and seconded to suspend the necessary rules and proceed out of order to item number 10. All in favor?
All right.
So moved. Item number 10 reads that we consider the possibility of establishing several, quote, resident-only parking spaces for the residential area on Beach Street located directly across from the Wisteria Hearst Museum. Under discussion, Councilor Valentin.
Thank you, Councilor Lisi. We actually have 2 residents here that are directly impacted by this. There's pretty much 2 homes that are right across the street from Wisteria Hearst, and the issue is that even though it's great that Wisteria Hearst is having more events and more foot traffic, when there are events that bring a larger crowd, when these folks are coming home, there is no place for them to park. So I spoke with them individually at their homes, and and also spoke to the director of Wisteria Hearst, and she's very much interested in coming up with a solution that works for everyone. What's happening for the most part is that when they have large events at Wisteria Hearst, they are encouraging people to use the senior center parking lot, but that's not always the case. So looking at what might be a realistic approach that can work for everyone, and like I said, the Wisteria Hearst staff is very much in favor of coming up with a solution that works for everyone, and if the committee is willing to, and you would suspend the rules, 2 residents are here and they can explain a little bit more what the obstacles are. Thank you.
It seems that one really easy solution would be that we put up some signs that say no overnight parking between a certain set of hours, because that would allow the residents to access it for their living situations. But we do have the residents here, so do you want to suspend the rules and allow them to speak?
Yeah, I'd rather hear from, I'd rather hear from the.
I think that was a yes. We'd like to suspend the rules and let them speak.
Oh.
No? Yes?
Well,
That's not what he was saying.
no, I'd rather hear from the city engineer first, just to hear what they have to say. I mean, I get the fact that they can't find a parking spot, but, I mean, I'll hear from them, but I'd rather just hear from the city engineer if possible. Then we can hear from them.
Is that a motion to suspend to allow the engineer to speak?
Do we need them, if we need a motion, sure.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to suspend the necessary rules and allow the city engineer and superintendent to speak. All in favor?
All right,
So moved.
We didn't really have, we didn't need to prepare anything. There's on-street parking available there. It's currently used by the residents and the visitors of Wisteria Hearst. If you want to restrict the parking and put permit parking in, that's the council's prerogative. I don't see an issue one way or another at this point.
good, well, right, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Well, I guess I don't see Carol over there. I'm sorry, I thought she was here.
Sarah's gone for the night. This is
Good.
all traffic.
Good for her. Resident parking only, what's the story with that, Madam Chair? I don't really, is that, I mean, I'm just completely ignorant of it. So do we allow that,
Well, I think what
city streets?
what Councilor Valentin is proposing that we consider, but I don't think this is exclusively the direction that we need to go in, is resident parking only, which is permitted parking. We have that in some areas of the city around Center Street, right? In particular. But I think that the problem is these events that happen, and then, 9 o'clock rolls around and the residents can't get into their parking spaces for overnight parking in front of their homes. And I think that there are a number of other signs that we have across the city that say no overnight parking or no parking between the hours of, 7, 8, 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. in the morning. And that would also just create at least, spaces for the residents on the street. There's no overnight parking. Oh, they can't access it either.
But I'm not hearing Councilor Valentin's order say that. I mean, to me, it's Wisteria Hearst, which is, events end at, 10, I would think, at the latest. So,
The reason the residents are here is so that they can actually explain what what the situation is and what they are experiencing, because they are the ones who are having this experience, not any of us in this room. This block on Beach Street is clearly not a typical residential area because there's not many blocks or there's not blocks around the city that have a venue that's across the street from houses where, people are looking for event parking or whatnot. And like I said, it's great that the museum is having more visitors, but as the ward counselor for Ward 4, if I'm speaking to a constituent about a concern that they have and a struggle they're having, it is my responsibility to bring it forward for discussion, and that's what we're doing. So they are here because they are more than happy to explain what their experience is, and that's why I requested that the committee suspend the rules and allow them to speak. They've been here since 6:30 waiting patiently, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilor Bartley.
Sure, I was just wondering, I'm happy to suspend the rules, but just for Reader's Digest version, you've conferred with them, and what are they gonna say that's different than what you just told me, that they can't, that the Wisteria-Hearst parking is causing them issues with getting into their house? Are they gonna say something different?
May I respond, Chair?
Yes, you may.
I have no idea what they're going to say, Councilor Bartley, because they are the residents that are having these experiences there. I've had conversations with both of them at their homes, and I'm giving them the opportunity
So
to...
what do they say to you when you're at their homes? I guess that's what I'm trying to drive at. So what are the issues that they're raising?
I'm sorry, I just don't understand why it's so complicated to have them speak on their own experience.
Because I'm asking you, the representative, you're talking to them, I'm just asking you a simple question. So you've conferred with them in their homes, they're saying what to you?
For example, they're saying, I come home from work, I have a bunch of groceries with me, and I get home, and because Wisteria-Hearst has an event, the whole block of Beach Street has no parking. I have no place to park so I can get into my home, bring my groceries in, call it a night, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, so they don't have a driveway? Is that what you said? So
No,
they
they
need to
do,
park-
they
need to
do
park
not
on
have a
Beach.
drive. These
So-
are houses that are facing Wisteria-Hearst, and they have their off-street parking right in front on Beach Street.
So for their resident parking, they rely on the on-street parking?
On-street
Correct.
parking.
They rely on on-street parking?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Alexander.
Thanks, Josie, and I'm appreciative that you guys came down. We're just trying to get to a quick solution here so you can go home. So, Josie, so there are no driveways. We need the on-street parking for residential parking. Bill, we have resident parking already. We have a process in place to create and hand out a sticker.
I believe so. There has been residential parking in different areas of the city over the years. I know, I don't know if it's still in effect now, but on Carter Street and Anderson Ave, across from the high school, there used to be permit parking. I know there's permit parking at Center Street.
Read resident-only permit parking.
Resident-only
So we have a
parking.
mechanism for a permit.
I believe so, and
Okay, and-
it's managed through the city clerk's office.
Perfect. And in your experience, I realize that you're not the guy doing it, but do we have an enforcement mechanism for resident only, no sticker, you get a ticket? I think we have a problem where even with the sticker, you're getting tickets.
It's been generally confusing and difficult to sustain. The
And
parking program, I don't think it's been successful.
do you think with a little bit of work, we can fine tune that and make it work?
I suppose it's a matter of, I think, residential, educating the residents of the requirements to get permits or the rules, and then working with the city clerk
Okay,
to
thanks.
get the
And
paperwork.
Gladys, correct me if I'm wrong, down on Center Street, the issue is that we have one permit per address, one sticker per address, but we have more than one car per address, and that's why some people are getting tickets. So we would need to, in this area, either recognize that there are going to be 2 cars per address, so 2 stickers per address, or whatever. Wisteria-Hearst has the senior center. Wisteria-Hearst has parking on the Wisteria-Hearst side of the street. We're not talking about restricting that at all, correct?
No.
As well as Pine Street, as well as whatever runs, Cabot Street running down the side, as well as whatever comes up to Hampshire, I think it is, coming up the other side. So this seems very straightforward to me. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, if somebody else wants to add something to it, but it sounds like resident only is the only sign that's going to work. We could restrict it to resident only from 6 p.m. to 9 a.m. or something like that, so that when you come home at the end of the day, there's someplace to park. Frankly, I don't think it's a problem to just restrict it 24 hours and it's a simpler, less confusing sign. So my inclination is if we're going to say residents only, it's residents only 24/7. That's just the easy thing to do. We're talking about one block of one side of a street. Does that meet your understanding of what would satisfy the neighbors if Wisteria-Hearst just basically stopped parking there?
So when I started having the conversations with them, what I did mention as just kind of a ballpark figure was I'm visualizing this as like 4 spots, like 2 per home. The issue is these 2 homes are right across the street from Wisteria-Hearst. So if somebody's coming for an event, oh great, there's parking right in front of Wisteria-Hearst. Let me just park there. These folks come home from work, no place to park. So I think the visual of having a sign there is a reminder for the folks that are coming to these events. And, you know, if they're not familiar with the area and they just see a sign that says resident parking only, then they don't park there. Most of the events, when I spoke to Kate from Wisteria-Hearst about this, the ones that are the busiest are usually evening. So, you know, something like 4 p.m. to whatever, 11 p.m. or something like that, I think would cover the base on that. I would prefer to stay away from 24-hour because then that could generate the illusion of, oh, now, you know, this block wants parking like that or that block, when in this case it's specifically around event time at Wisteria-Hearst. So I would just caution us to be aware of that if we just say 24-hour, then that can possibly be some misleading kind of, you know what I mean? It could be a misleading scenario. And this is specifically around events, which is what's bringing the traffic. So the way I envisioned it, and that's what I shared with them, is 4 spaces, basically something like 4 to 11 p.m., resident parking only, and that's it. And if, you know, and that's why I would like them to speak, because if they have other experiences or better, you know, ideas, I think as members of the community, you know, that's part of our role, is to be listening to our constituents' concerns and addressing them, and that's what we're doing.
So I would actually suggest that we do 4 spaces, permit parking overnight, because I think that if we say overnight is like from, you know, 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. to whenever.
But that doesn't solve the problem.
It would, because if no one, you know, you can't park in this spot if you're going to an event that is going to end at, I mean, you can park there if it's 9 o'clock, but you can't park there if the event is going to end later than 9 o'clock.
But you can't park there if an event, you can park there for an event that starts at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 o'clock in the evening.
Until 9.
That's a problem for people who are coming home to their groceries.
That's one of the problem hours that they described.
The 5 o'clock?
That's why I think,
There are weekend events over there. I mean, I think.
can we please allow them to speak?
Yes, specifically for the purpose of finding out when they want to be able to park.
Well,
You need a motion.
That's a motion. A motion to suspend to allow the residents of Beach Street to come over and tell us what the issue is.
Is there a second?
I want to continue the discussion.
Well, I think we should get some more information, because we're just not getting the whole story from Councilor Valentine, and I don't think
I just want
it's
to ask one more question.
intentional.
Whether it's rhetorical, but they're residents of a home. They're not, you know, we change the law, we make a law for resident parking only. That goes forward. I mean, so I empathize completely. I want to help them. I get it completely. I get this whole thing. But if we change the law, who's to say that they don't sell the house in a year from now and somebody else moves in and then they need something else? I'm just asking to consider that. That's all. So I'll happily second the motion.
Motion has been made and seconded to suspend the necessary rules and allow the public members to speak on this issue. If you come to the microphone, just state your name and address for the record so that we know who's speaking. So, and you're 2 separate property owners, right? Yeah.
Yes, my name is Zulma. My name is Zulma Fermain, and I'm at 251 Beach Street, 2nd floor. The homeowner there, it's my.
You can move it so that it's easier for you.
Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, 251 Beach Street, 2nd floor. My mother is the owner, Sonia Avila. right across from the Wisteria Hertz.
My name is Camilo Torres. I live on 249 B Street. I have lived there since 1999. And our house is on the renovation right now. We're planning on staying there for at least 8-10 more years. I thank Councilor Valentin for what she has shared with you, but the whole story has not been shared with all of you. We have issues on Saturdays. Like, Victoria Hearst is crowded on Saturdays from morning until evening. Fridays, yes, evening, they're doing great. But we go out and we have to go shopping. We come back at 2 o'clock and we have to park half a block away and bring our groceries into the house. 2 or 3 times we have to go back to the car and come and do it. We have to go sometime park on the other side, throw the groceries over the fence, in my case, in order for me to get everything taken to the house. That's the issue with our parking. And I understand the Historic House is doing great. When they have their events, they're parking all around the museum and taking Campbell Street and now the senior center. I understand, but for us, what are we going to do?
And just to make it clear, so you don't have off-street parking. There's no driveway on either of those properties?
No.
And it seems that at least 251 is actually a two-family home?
That's actually a three-family home. My brother
Three-family
lives
home.
upstairs, my mother lives on the first floor, and I'm in the second floor. We run daycare businesses there too, and that's not an issue because parents just drop their kids off and they just go home and pick them up in the afternoons.
Yep.
It's just pretty much like Carmelo said, Saturday mornings, the events, it's wonderful. We don't mind it. We don't want to make a big fuss about it, but it's just the parking. I mean, if we're out and we do groceries, I have a child and I'm expecting a couple years back, I had to walk from the side of the block with groceries or leave it in the car until it cleared up to kind of watch out the window. There's a parking spot, let me go get it, that type of thing, because we don't have a driveway. Yeah, we don't want to make a fuss about it, but it's an issue, especially now the winter's coming, it's cold, so it's just a little bit of a hassle. And like he said before, just sucks having to go around the block, and we even asked to see if just cones would work, if they're having the events. That was my suggestion, and I had, told her about it, that when they're having their events, would just put some cones, maybe from a limit to a limit, if they can do that, don't park there.
What was their reaction?
What was that?
What was their reaction when you suggested that?
Reaction to whom?
It was only suggested to Councilor Valentin.
Right,
after the
it was just
Wisteria
suggested to
Hearst.
her, because, we never had a chance to.
Oh, it's
I
great.
did went to my son's father went one time, and they said, sure, that we'll do it. They were fine about it. I'm not sure who was the lady that worked there in Historic Hertz, but it was talked to them, and they said fine. They didn't have a problem with that, and it never happened. So we just left it alone. We don't, just left it alone.
Councilor Alexander has a question, but I do want to just ask, Carmelo, is your property a single family, two family, three family?
Single family.
Single family. So it is literally 4 spaces, one for each unit that we're looking to figure out here. Thank you. Councilor Alexander.
Thanks. This is a perfectly reasonable request. There's nothing weird here. You're not imposing on Wisteria Hearst, who I know and love and think they're great. I just have a couple of questions. One is one space per living unit enough? Do you guys have, I'm talking to you now, do you have 2 cars?
We have 3 cars, but one is for my college son.
Who's presumably at college?
Yes.
So you need 2 though, realistically?
I need 2, yes.
Okay. And in your 3 units,
Yeah, 3 units, 4 cars.
so maybe we should look at least 6 or 8 spaces along there. Again, this is no imposition to anybody else, so I don't really see an issue with carving out enough space for you guys.
It's only 2 residential because the home towards if I'm looking this way, they have their own parking spots, so, in the back. So, that long strip, it's, it's a long strip, so.
So maybe we can carve out 6 for you. Traffic cones are a little bit of a problem because if you put them up and it keeps people out, and then you guys park there, everybody else is going to go, well, they're parking there. So that isn't, it's a good solution if you've got somebody standing there all the time. It doesn't really work if it's not monitored. What I'm hearing is we have a residents-only parking program in place. We have some challenges with making sure the right cars have stickers. The stickers obviously going to expire. You're going to have to renew them, I'm guessing annually, whatever the current program is. But I see no problem with this. I think we should just go ahead and do it. Wisteria Hearst has no objection to it. They have plenty of parking, we know that. And this solves a minor problem for a couple of people who've been living there for
like
years.
I said,
so.
my son was born there. We intend to stay there forever. We love
Yeah,
the home.
well,
we
I
love
mean,
the Wisteria
even if
Hearst
you
in
sell the
front of
house,
us.
the new owners are gonna have cars, you know?
We've seen weddings there.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And we just love it.
So thank you.
So Bill, out of curiosity, if we create a permit parking situation, and we create 4 spaces, can we issue, how do we issue the number of actual permits? Do they correspond exactly to the spaces, or could we issue 6 permits for 4 spaces?
Well, I'm thinking we'd measure out enough space on the street to park 6 cars, 8 cars, however many residential permits are authorized for the area, and we just measure out that area and sign it, residential parking, permit parking only.
But is there, I guess, a precedent? I mean, if we were able to, because Carmelo has, 3 car users, 2 in the house at the time, but they may not all need to be grabbing that space on event night, right? Someone may be out, someone may be coming and going. So is there a way to create, 5 spaces but issue 6 permits so that every car that they own between these properties has a permit, but the number of spaces that are actually marked on the street would be 1 less? Does that make sense?
It does. I don't think it's necessary there.
That can certainly be done if you want. We can measure space for 5, and you can issue authorize how many permits you wish, and we can.
Councilor Alexander has a question.
Thanks, Bill. That's a standard long block right there. How long is it?
Excuse me?
How long is that block? It's a standard long block there.
They're 500 feet.
So it's huge. And spaces are how long, give or take? 18 feet. 18 feet, so 20, so we're talking 100 feet out of 500 feet on the block. Okay, thank you.
I have in queue Councilor LeBron Martinez and then Councilor McGivern.
So my question is, besides getting the stickers, just because, let's say, they're saying that it may be for them, but let's say I have a visitor, they're coming in, my card, let's say it's not there. Is there, instead of putting stickers, can we have like a placard, like, the handicap placards you put over the window, and then a person, you're coming to visit, you can ask and borrow it, put it on, and at least you're there, and it's covering the time of being out there instead of doing street signage? I'm just questioning.
Well, I think you need the signage anyway, and then there, we could have something that says visitor parking. But I think that, I don't.
Just because it's happened at the other place and they're getting ticketed visiting too, so I'm just trying to figure this out. Thank you. That's all.
Yeah, I'm thinking, sorry.
Go ahead. No, I was just thinking because it is around these events that we're having the issues.
Yeah,
right?
and I think that, the reason I said 4 spots was because the understanding is, it's kind of first come, first serve with, between these 2 houses. And so it'd be great if all the cars can fit there, but if not, at least, there's some priority. And so I'm just thinking that when I was speaking to Bill a little bit about this before the meeting started, and he gave me the example of Center Street and how city clerk is pretty much managing those stickers and those permits, and how sometimes that's tricky. I'm just thinking that, even if there's a mechanism where the signage, just says what it says, and, these folks know which cars belong to those homes and which not. And then the second part of this is the enforcement piece. So if they, if they're residents there and they clearly have documents that show that they are residents there, and there's a car there that doesn't belong to either of these 2 homes, that they can have a mechanism where they call the HPD and say, this car is parked here and it's not supposed to be parked here, and that's it. So the sticker thing I understand also because it's a bigger area elsewhere, but I mean, for these 4, 5, 6 spots, whatever it's going to be, and just for the record, I mean, I'm happy with any of it because I think it's a matter of taking care of the concerns that constituents bring to us. As long as there's an enforcement mechanism, you know, we can be here all night saying 4, 5, 6, or whatever we want to say, but anything is better than what we have now, which is nothing. So that's just for the record.
Great, thank you. Councilor McGivern.
I think we're headed in the right direction. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts doesn't allow any designated parking per se on a street for anyone. The residential parking works where anyone who is a resident can get a permit, and if it's a residential zone, it's first come, first served. I think we have to ask the homeowners here, in front of the DMH home, is that parking or no parking at the beginning of your block? The group home.
Oh, the big house, they have their own parking.
No, I know that, but on Beach Street, can people park in front of them?
Yes,
Okay, because it,
there's no sign there,
okay,
yes.
because this is where Beach Street becomes one-way, and it was funneled years ago to get people coming from the two-way into a one-lane instead of a two-lane all the ways down until later. But if you take 6 or 7 spaces, it's going to create a problem like Gladys sees down in Ward 1 with visitors coming. Because if you don't have a sticker, you can't park there without getting a ticket. And the way it works in Boston is it's a tow zone, not a ticket.
So I think we should move forward, creating 5 spaces and 6 permits associated with that. I think that the enforcement mechanism of a cop coming by and seeing the permit as opposed to having to like knock on doors and track down owners is probably more efficient. Councilor Bartley?
Does it matter, Bill, does it matter if it's because it's a Route 202? Does that impact this at all?
State highway?
No, it's a state numbered route under city control, so we maintain it.
Motion.
Make a motion that we designate 5 spaces in front of the 2 homes. By Bill's numbers, there are 25 spaces along that side of the street, so I think that's fine. And that the signs say resident parking only, permit required, and that the city clerk's office manage the permits as they do for other resident parking only areas.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Under discussion, Councilor McGivern.
And just for the record, the first home in between the group home and the middle of the street was the former home of the Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate, Mossy Donahue, and the former mayor of the city of Holyoke partly grew up in that home, Marty Dunn.
Amend my motion to 7 spaces.
Okay, so 5 spaces, and I'm sure that Kara has to draft this into legal language for us, so I'll check in with her and I'll make sure she understands that we're designating 5 spaces. We'll get measurements from the engineering department for those 5 spaces, and then we'll communicate with the legal form that we're looking for 6 permits to be associated with those 5 spaces. Okay? Sound like it's gonna work?
Thank you.
Should we take a vote on that?
Yeah. So, the motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
All right.
So moved. Counselor LeBron Martinez is here, and
Want to take
She's-
all of them, 5, 6, 12, and 13?
we'll take them up as a package, and then we'll split them out. Sure. So, motion has been made to suspend the necessary rules. What did you say? We're not going to make a vote on them together. Well, we can take them up for discussion. Yeah, we'll have a discussion as a group, and then we'll figure out the motions afterwards. So the motion has been made to suspend the necessary rules, to take up items out of order. All in favor?
All right.
So moved. And we'll package 5, 6, 12, and 13. These are all filed by Councilor LeBron Martinez. Under discussion, let's start with item number 5. That we want to designate the current handicap parking in front of Fernandez during business hours, 11 to 4 p.m. for patrons who come into the restaurant. I thought we had dealt with this.
done.
about it in full council, but we didn't go to committee.
We didn't talk about this at the last meeting that we had, Bill and Yemen? We did.
Did we?
Yeah.
I don't know what's going.
Is your
So we're
microphone on? Yeah, is your mic on?
Green light.
The green light. Get up. So just, thank you.
Hello? Yeah.
Yes.
Included 15-minute parking or 1-hour parking or something?
Do you have it in your notes, Shyam? I don't have it in
I-
front of me.
I've sent that Monday back to the law department. It was a 5-0 vote, I believe.
5-0 vote to do what? To make it 1 hour?
To make it limited parking for handicap.
It's already handicap parking.
Right, correct, but
We're not changing it.
not changing it, just,
Are we changing, making it 1-hour parking as well during business hours? Was that the solution?
it's either 1 or 2.
So it was a time limit?
Yes.
What was it?
It was a time limit. I'm not sure if it was 1 hour or 2 hour. I recall it was 1 hour. Because I remember a discussion about how long it was taking. Joe, you must have been here.
Yes.
Hour and 10 minutes?
That's how long it
Well, it depends where you're eating.
Is that include ordering or is that just eating?
We have chocolate.
So this has been complied with. I think what happened was, we didn't have the measurements, and so we didn't have a legal form to put on the full council agenda, but it has been complied with. Item number 6 is looking for 3 additional parking spaces to be designated and permitted from 7:30 to 9:30, 3 to 5 p.m. on Dwight Street for Square One Daycare. We did that as well. So these 5 and 6 are complied with.
I don't, 6, we didn't finish that off. No, Young was gonna go look at that and come back to us a report. Well, we didn't, I didn't vote on that.
Yeah, that one we didn't finish.
I,
I have a new notebook here, so I don't have.
have
Bill,
you,
do you have any notes on where we left it? It must have been in your hands at some level.
Yeah, we're gonna go back and look at the layout that was there, because I knew there was some portion of that block that was 15-minute parking, and then there was meters, and there's it's an interesting collection of assorted obstacles and items out there. There's a hydrant that's inconveniently located, there's an old loading dock striping, there's 15-minute parking, there's a handicap spot there on that block. The block from the alley east toward High Street, that side, that half of the block, that's where the hydrant is located, and I believe there's about 2 15-minute spaces that are there. We could probably squeeze a third in the way the signs are laid out and get rid of some of that striping, but we could probably provide 3 15-minute parking spaces there, since it's already designated that now. As for adding more, you could go to the other half of the block from the alley west toward Maple Street. There's 3 metered parking spaces there and a handicap spot. You could eliminate the metered spaces, but
Well, can we do something like what we did at the Lawrence School, where we created the drop-off zone during the designated hours? So we said drop-off only zone between the, drop-off hours for a school and the end of school. And can we do something like that here? So we don't have to actually create more 15-minute parking or more specific spaces, but we could just create the drop-off zone for those hours?
what's the difference between a drop-off at an hour in the morning, a couple hours in the morning, a couple hours in the afternoon, and a 15-minute parking space that's there all the time? You can just roll in, get out, and you don't have to put any money in the meters, because those are already been removed. And you drop off, you stop your car, you drop your kid off, you come back, and you got 15 minutes to do it for free. I don't see the need to add hour restrictions to spaces that you already have there for 15 minutes anyway.
So I have Counselor Bartley in queue.
Yeah, thanks, Bill, and Gladys. I'm very familiar with that, and I work right around the corner for Gladys. So actually, I'm just going to talk right to Gladys, because there are two 15-minute parking spaces just past the halfway point of the block, Gladys, where you walk into Square One. I think what Bill just described is spot on. There is a fire hydrant there that takes up way too much space and is striped inconveniently at best. You could add a third 15-minute only parking spot there, and I think that might cover, yeah, it'd be 15 minutes for the whole day long, 15-minute parking. I don't really want to make a designated parking space for a particular business on a busy city street when this is, I think Bill's suggestion and what I observed, I think is not just a fair compromise, it's just a really great idea if we can lay that out. And I think that would satisfy Square One. So I think your order, if we could amend it, and I don't want to do it without your okay, I'd like to amend it, just add another 15-minute, to rework that half of the block, Bill. I don't, if you might describe it as the east side of that, heading on the eastern half of that block, and just add another particular, I'm not gonna make the motion now until Gladys says okay, but to make that, so you've got two 15-minute parking spots. I think you got room for a third one right there. So I'd like the committee to consider that. Thank you.
Councilor Alexander, and then Councilor LeBron Martinez.
Sure. So Gladys, your order is looking for 3 additional spaces. Is that because in your understanding of the situation there, you need a total of 5?
Well,
Pick up and drop off, or will
I
3 do
was
it?
trying to look for the photos. I had taken some pictures, and now, if it was confirmed that there is already 2 in existing, I even had a letter that I thought that was attached. Was it the letter attached from the school requesting it? It's just that, but I guess not. So the issue is that when in front of the building, as he mentioned, there's some lines already lined up. There is already at the corner, there's a sign that you can park.
Yep.
But I don't recall that there's 2 already existing. No, one, it could be a 150-minute parking, but not 3.
There are 2 right now, Gladys.
There is 2?
Yes.
If Dave's saying 2, I'm going with there are 2.
Because
No, on this side of where Square One is located, just, Gordon, so if you take the left over here, be on the left-hand side of the street, there are 2 15-minute parking spaces as well as a fire hydrant. that
And
is-
apparently an old loading area that's defunct, so we could unline that.
Exactly, so,
So we can create a third one. So my question, Gladys, again, is that gets 3. Is that enough? Or are we looking for 5?
I hope that it does. This was requested by, like I said, the administration and the parents themselves. So
I'm hearing.
if that's
I
gonna
can't understand what you're hearing.
help with the third one, we'll go for the third one.
Okay,
then.
why don't we do that for now? And then if they come back and say, gee, 3 still isn't doing it, people are double parking, whatever other crisis is happening. Councilor Bartley, I totally agree with you in agreeing with Bill that a 15-minute space solves the problem without having to sit there and get out my calendar and my sundial and everything to figure out if it's during the hours that this particular thing. I hate complicated parking signs. It drives me crazy. You go into Boston, there are 3 different contradictory signs on the same pole, and you have to figure out what phase of the moon it is before you can decide whether you can park there or not. So 15 minutes, 24/7, nice and simple. Residents only, 24/7, nice and simple.
that's real clean, yeah, I like that a lot.
So let's try it with the 3. I would call that a motion that this is complied with pending, Bill doing his thing. And see if it works. Yeah, I wasn't making a motion yet.
Councilor McGivern.
I'm sorry, I got lost. Mr. Fuqua told me what would the answer to my question, but again, we can't designate for a specific business. We can do a drop-off zone, and we can do it by time, but
Yep.
who's ever dropping off can do it. One of the biggest problems downtown and in the meter zones is it's a 2-hour limit at each meter, and nobody enforces it. If you made people turn over after 2 hours in any meter zone, those spaces would open up, and we wouldn't be having the problems we're having with the handicap zones and with the drop-off zones. But enforcement, it's not happening.
So the motion on the floor is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'll make the motion in a second, so I have to say our enforcement isn't bad. I think Danny does a pretty decent job. I'm not saying, you're not saying he isn't, but Danny gets out and enforces our parking meters. I think one of the big problems, if I may, just add it to 2 seconds, the handicap parking in a designated metered parking spot all day long, where I see a Lexus parked over here on Dwight Street all day long in front of the Holyoke Medical Center with a handicap placard. I mean, it's outrageous, but, so when you have a lack of. Well, I understand it's a state law, Counselor, but when you have a total lack of humility, you don't care. You park your Lexus anywhere you damn well please. So, I will make the motion to amend that. Do I have to make a motion to amend the order?
To motion for the 3 15-minute parking spaces.
So I'll just make a motion to add one, to amend this order to make one additional 15-minute parking spot in the area we just described.
Under discussion, Councilor LeBron Martinez, and then Councilor McGivern.
So for my personal clarification, is that gonna go right in front, or is it right in, like, up at the corner by sort of like
Right in front.
Maple?
It's right in front, right where the alley is, Gladys.
On the side, on Dwight Street, is what I understand.
Right to the
Right next to
hydrant?
Hydrant. That's
Okay.
right. That's right in front of her. Right in front of Square One.
Right,
I think that's what you mean by in front.
yeah, that's what I'm
Okay.
trying to find out, okay.
So if we can just motion that we create a total of 3 15-minute parking spaces there. Yeah.
Well, there are two now. Do you want, sure, if,
There are two there now? I can only think of one.
We'll check out the measurements and see if there need to be any adjustments in the.
I'll make the motion at
The
3.
area that's designated for 15 minutes and make sure there's enough room for 3. And if it's already measured out and is adequate, we'll just clean up the striping and make it so that 3 are there.
So I'll make the motion for 3 15-minute parking spaces shall be so designated.
Yeah, thank you. Motion has been made and seconded, and we have a discussion point from Councilor McGivern.
Just to make the record clear, I was not criticizing our enforcement officer, Danny. He's one person to cover a very large area. He does go around and does the ticketing and makes sure people are putting money in the meters. One person cannot enforce a 2-hour zone. We used to have the police department back up to 2 enforcement officers. And when it comes to a 2-hour zone or a 15-minute zone, it's very difficult to make those tickets stick if you're not documenting the time that person actually parked there and the time the person left or didn't leave in time to get the ticket. And that's the criticism I was over in general, not against one enforcement officer who cannot be expected to do the 2-hour enforcement without the help of the police department.
Thank you. So on the motion then, that we have a total of 3 15-minute parking spaces on the east side of Dwight Street. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Go ahead, yeah.
Just for the record, in Northampton, they have the same issue, and the cops just take a time-stamped picture with their phone, and if there's a ticket given, the picture goes with the ticket.
And if we can get the police department to do that, enforcement, we'll have no parking problems downtown.
Yeah, just gotta recommend it, Joe.
Item number 12 is filed by Councilor LeBron Martinez that a 4-way stop sign be placed on the intersection of Bauer Street within the bridge by the underpass and Mosier Street. Under discussion, Councilor LeBron Martinez.
So this was brought to my attention that there's a concern the way that people go under the underpath. I guess there is not a stop sign and people are just driving right into it, and they're concerned about that and hoping that there could be something done. And people suggested probably a 4-stop sign. I know there's one on your left of Mosher, but there's not one like maybe under the bridge so that they can stop and look and go up. They're just driving right through it, assuming that the other 2 are stopping up at top, and that's a concern. So I don't know if that something can be done about that.
Bill, Yem, any ideas, any suggestions for that one?
We took a look at it briefly the other day, but we'd like to do a little bit more study and report back at the next meeting.
Okay. I think we'll probably want to take this up again. Early December is when I would project that we'd be able to get this on, or late November. I wouldn't want to put it off too late because if the snow starts piling up and that hill becomes a problem with snow, I'm sure.
Yeah, we had looked at stopping Mosier Street at the underpass and then Bauer Street coming down the hill. No matter how you do that, there's problems with each of those approaches. You've got the Bauer Street hill, trying to stop at a stop sign there. Coming onto the underpass, there's a very wide radius there and some brush and bushes. There's some geometric issues that we want to look at and come back with some recommendations on those.
Anything like a blinking yellow light that will say slow at all times?
Blinking yellow light is just decoration. Nobody pays attention to those. Nobody pays attention to the solid red lights that are out here half the time.
I'm not talking about a traffic light, but something that would look like a pedestrian crossing, you know, so it's not a traffic signal, but like some sort of warning light. For example, I know there's some crosswalks where you could push the button and it has the, you know, I guess diamond-shaped yellow sign with a pedestrian crossing and it lights up. But if we had something that was permanently flashing like that, yellow, that said, you know, everybody's got to go slow in this area.
Well, let's look at that's part of our investigation. We'll look at the accident history and the situation there and make some recommendations.
Okay. Councilor Bartley?
Bill, does the street that goes underneath the railroad tracks, that portion, what's the name of that?
That's Mosier Street.
That's part of Mosier Street, okay. So it doesn't like go in a straight line then, does it?
No, there's a jog right there at Bauer.
Okay, and is there a stop sign when you're traveling east on Mosier Street? Isn't there a stop sign there?
Coming from Maine underneath the railroad, no, there is no stop sign there.
There's no stop.
That's what
Just
there
go
is.
across, you can go through the intersection across
Oh, there's no-
Bauer or across the Mosier.
Okay, so there's definitely a stop sign on the main part of Mosier Street when it kind of connects into Bauer Street?
Coming from the east?
Yes, there's a stop sign there, but it gotta be.
Yeah, there's a stop
Okay.
sign at Mosier Street westbound at Bauer.
Okay, but there is not a stop sign at Mosier Street eastbound coming from Maine?
Correct.
Oh, wow, okay.
So,
Well, that's crazy. So what, I mean, so. Well, that is crazy. So now, how about coming, Bill, from Lyman Street on Bauer Street? Is there a stop sign there?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, why don't we just say, all right, well, we'll continue. But I mean, the easy fix here is to put the stop sign at the corner of Bowers and Mosier Street coming from Main Street. Is it? To me, that's easy, but whatever. Continue it.
And that's what the order filed says, but
Well,
And it makes sense. I mean, it's a street that's already stopped in one direction. It's an equally awkward intersection in the other. What's the rationale for not doing it?
The intersection has a wide radius, a sweeping radius going up Bauer Street, and to put a stop sign there at the side of the road, it'll never be seen. Ideally, you'd want to put more of a right angle curb there, or berm that would put the stop sign out where it can be easily seen when you come under the underpass. Right now, it would be put into the bushes, and cars would just roll right around the corner.
Yeah, I agree. Reconstructing that sounds like a good idea.
So that would be
Especially 'cause we're
potentially
going to
part of
be-
our recommendation to come back with.
yeah, and especially because we're likely going to experience a lot more foot traffic over there because that's the connection over to the train station platform. So, yeah, I'll look forward to that recommendation then.
motion to table.
Motion has been made. Yep, and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. And then item number 13,
Can I just ask
sorry, go ahead.
quickly? So it's gonna table on grounds of what? What's gonna happen? About the study? It's that, what's gonna happen next? I just wanna know what's gonna happen.
so they're doing some more analysis about the accident history there and also what types of recommendations they could make for that intersection. And it seems that one of the recommendations that may come out of their analysis, it just may come out, but we're not sure at this point, is that the corner is sharpened to a formal 90-degree angle to make it more clear if we do put a stop sign there that people are going to be able to see it, and then also protect some of the pedestrian traffic that will be passing under.
Thank you.
You want to talk? Go ahead.
Just for a half sec, for Bill. With, again, all due respect to looking at accident history, I think this is a good example of where we should move towards preventing rather than responding to accidents. We have an anticipated change to the pedestrian traffic regime there because of differing uses of the area from what it historically has been. So what's happened in the past is not, past performance is not a guarantee of future results. So it's more like, let's look at how this area is going to be used going forward and what's the best way to manage both vehicular and pedestrian traffic in that projected new environment rather than looking backwards. So.
It's part of our complete streets ordinance. So item number 13, filed by Councilor LeBron Martinez, says that we remove a handicap sign from 18 Center Street because it is no longer needed.
Motion to adopt and forward to engineering.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. We just need the measurements for the legal form to be deleted.
No, we don't, no need to remeasure, we'll just,
You'll take the sign out, and legal will change the form.
legal will change the, they'll send us paperwork to delete the existing.
Okay, thank you.
All right, my fewer sign.
Thanks, Gladys.
Take it.
So,
Two.
motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
So moved, that the engineer investigate stopping the allowance for a right turn on red from Route 141 onto Northampton Street in front of the Northampton Street Fire Station. Under discussion, we did talk about this at the last meeting, and you guys said you were going to take a look at it and make some recommendations. Yem, do you have a report for us?
I have a report. I apologize ahead of time that it's a bit, the font is a bit small. Hope you can make sense of that.
Thank you. Whoa.
So I had a discussion with Mass DOT District 2. Any change to the signal operation, including the installation of sign, would require their approval. Looking at the, we've done a traffic count there, and looking at the queue, the vehicle queue backup, potential backup if you were to install the no turn on red sign. So the recommendation at this point is to not install no turn on red sign, but instead to complete a study, a full-blown study of the intersections. The intersection was constructed, I believe, in 1970 through Federal 8 grant. Hence, that's why there's an agreement between the city and the state. I've also attached the agreement to the findings.
So 8 point means 4 points from the city's perspective and 4 points from the state's perspective? Is that how you get the 4 point and 8 point studies? No.
I'm not following that.
I'm just asking, because I haven't ever heard that language before. So a 4 point study includes what? No?
They would,
I thought that the recommendation at this point is to take on a 4-point study. Am I not hearing that correctly?
it's to do a traffic study to be complete by traffic consultant, and not just looking at the installation of no turn on red sign.
So looking more broadly.
Exactly.
So traffic study. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, would you recommend that we, knowing that the property across from the fire station on Dwight there is about to be redeveloped?
Correct.
Hopefully.
Correct.
Fingers crossed. Is your recommendation that we basically wait until we know what that's gonna look like, so that any study incorporates the traffic flow and the traffic volumes and stuff for whatever that's gonna be? Are you suggesting leave it alone until then? I know, so my question is, is your recommendation that we leave it alone until we have clarity on that?
That has no bearing, but yes, it would, seeing that that property is about to be, say, sold or to be redeveloped, and I think probably could use an entrance off of East Hampton Street, Route 41. And again, it could change the whole setup of the intersections, depending on, what kind of
Put an
development we
entrance
have.
off 141 into there, you're gonna have people killing themselves coming off the highway.
And again, we look at the accident reports, and it's not extremely high, but it's up there.
16 accidents in 5 years? Yeah, I'd call that fairly high. I understand the rationale, and also, there's this overriding agreement and all that, for not putting a no turn on red, which would of course just cue traffic up onto 141. But what about doing what we did down by the, what is that? It's not Lincoln, the Rotary at the bottom of the hill there? Yeah. Where there's a right arrow that says something like right on red after stop.
Stop on red.
We know a right on red is supposed to be a stop. We also know that because it's a dedicated lane, people don't. And they're looking over their shoulder away from the traffic they're driving into as they cross in front of a fire station. That is not a recipe for a really good traffic design. So what about that as a short term without changing the way the intersection functions, but just guiding people to pay a little more attention?
I've had that discussion with the state engineer also, and that is something they would entertain without having to need an approval and look at, our engineering backup, study backup.
They would be okay with that
Without any,
So the
Yeah.
motion that we adopt in that form and move forward with it.
again, it's a signage that's essentially enforcing,
What already
What's there.
exists.
Existing law.
so that's,
Yeah.
And there's already power right there, so you can put it.
I would say that would be up to you to, if that's, I concur with that.
So, just for clarity's sake, would it be, right on red, or is it a red arrow after stop?
It would be right on red after a stop, and I would recommend doing it on a trial basis and just looking at traffic backups. Just from a one-day count, I just see the vehicle queues. It's up there.
So it's my sense that, to make it happen, we're going to need to, pass an ordinance, and then I'm assuming then you and Bill are going to be, monitoring the situation and then asking us if we need to change
As
it.
part of the
Oh, because it's just. a
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. All right on red is right on red after stop, right? That's the state law?
Yes.
Bill,
And-
Bill's nodding yes, yes?
And this is why we don't need the.
So we don't need an ordinance change, because all we're saying is put up signage and a light that enforce or directs people more firmly
Sure.
to follow the existing law, not to change the law at all, correct?
Exactly.
Okay, so from us, I guess I'm saying we'd like to adopt, what I'd like to be able to do is make a motion that we're adopting the engineer's recommendation, that we put a red arrow with a right on red after stop sign next to the red arrow. Is that your recommendation?
Correct.
Perfect, thank you. Motion to adopt the engineer's recommendation.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'm not, Sure, I'll second it.
It's a temporary fix.
Yep.
Yep. The motion's been made and seconded to adopt the engineer's report that we put a right on red after stop sign, along with the right arrow signalization at the ramp off of 141 onto Northampton Street. All in favor?
All right.
So moved. Okay.
Why don't we just do my two last, Gordon, because they're just, let's just go right to 4 if I'm,
I don't know if you know, but the media is here for those orders.
which ones?
Three.
For 3? Oh,
Is it not,
no, I just got, I'm really linear, so I'm just gonna keep this in order, but we'll do 3. Sure, let's do 3. Sure.
So item number 3, filed by Councilor Bartley, says due to traffic violations and a number of accidents, the city should work with the owners of Kmart Plaza to reconfigure the Whiting Farms Road entrance exit. The motion has been made and seconded to take up. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Under discussion, Councilor Bartley, you want to give us a quick refresher on what the issues are over there?
Sure, I mean, I think we're pretty familiar with what's happening. There's, this is at the Whiting Farms Road entrance exit to Kmart Plaza. And the issue that's come up, and there was a kind of a traffic flow change a number of years ago, and the plan was to get all traffic to start flowing into Kmart Plaza from Northampton Street, Route 5. That was the ideal. That would be your southbound traffic. So in other words, if you took a right onto Whiting Farms Road, which a lot of us do, you would be prohibited from turning left into the Kmart Plaza. Experience has shown that left-hand turns happen there, I would say, almost every 5 minutes of the day. And we've seen government vehicles turn into there. We've seen PVTA buses take the left illegally from Whiting Farms into Kmart Plaza. So, and when I'm not going to identify any government vehicles, but I've seen government-issued vehicles do that illegally. So, the alternative for motorists that want to obey the law is they will proceed along Whiting Farms Road up to Station 5, Fire Station 5, turn into that area and make what is an illegal U-turn. And what happens is, while they're in the process of making U-turn, their vehicles are stopped in front of bay doors controlled by emergency vehicles, TAC vehicles and engine companies who are out to protect the citizens of Holyoke. So God forbid, if there's a traffic jam on Whiting Farms Road, which there often is at Christmas time, cars are going to be stopped in front of the doors on Station 5. When the doors go up, and they want to fire out, cars are going to be there trying to make an illegal U-turn back onto Whiting Farms Road. So the hope is with this order that we're going to get feedback from our professionals as to how we can mitigate this issue. I hope that sums it up okay for everybody.
Yep. And we did talk about Yem and Bill approaching the property owner to see what they would be amenable to. So what's the update on that one?
I was able to get the name of the property manager for Sears Holding. It owns Kmart Corporation and the Plaza property that this driveway accesses. So I have a call into Karen Kelly. She works for Sears Holdings. I have not heard from her yet, but I'll continue to pursue. And basically my messages to her were I wanted to discuss the potential changes to the entryway to hopefully facilitate, better passage for customers to get into the property. It's not like we're going to disrupt things or make it more difficult or close the driveway. We're just going to look at trying to make it better and hopefully change or accommodate this persistent left turn if we can kind of reverse what has been done here over the years and prohibiting that left turn. I've basically tried to explain that to her briefly in messages. So when I do get to reach out to her and talk to her, I'll explain it further and share pictures or drawings or whatever we may need to explain what we'd like to do there eventually, and try to reverse this this illegal left turn and make it more accommodating for motorists to get in there.
Great. Council Bartley?
So what is it that, what, have you had a chance to think about it, Bill or Yem, as to what is it, what are you recommending that we do?
My staff did the manual count in the evening and the morning, and yes, we count 60 illegal turns in 2 hours, so
In 2 hours?
every 2 minutes.
Okay, so, oh boy, okay, so I was really underestimating it then. I think I said every 5 minutes, but every 2 minutes, there's an illegal left turn. Okay, so now what?
Again, until we can reach have a discussion with the proponent, the owner, I think it would be tough for the city to take on the cost. I mean, say move the egress or the access further away from the intersection. That's one solution, but.
And also removing the way that the lane is shaped, because it's shaped to prevent the left turn in, right?
Yeah, the driveway's always been at that location, and what happened 15 years ago is we put an odd-shaped island there to prohibit or deter people from continuing to make this left-hand turn, because it was the wishes at the time to make to dissuade drivers from using that as an entrance from Northampton Street and Whiting Farms Road, as Councilor Bartley had indicated earlier. The simplest way is, if we wanted to reverse that pattern and make this a proper legal left turn, is that we would demolish that existing island and put a normal square, a proper island there that would allow cars to drive in and drive out safely.
Great. Councilor Alexander?
Thanks, guys. So the reason that we took out the left turn in the first place is because the driveway is too close to the intersection, correct? So that people are like making the right and then making an immediate left and queuing back into the intersection if they can?
No, I don't recall that was really a problem. It was an attempt to curtail what was a persistent right turn on Northampton Street to Whiting Farms Road, because that was basically the shortest distance to get from Northampton Street to Kmart. You would take the right off of Northampton Street and then the immediate left into that driveway.
Okay, and why did we not want people doing that?
There was traffic.
May I?
Yes.
May I, Madam Chair? Okay. So Gordon, just you're traveling Route 5 south.
Right.
Technically, that's, for most of that road, that's one lane until you get to Gilman Street, then it becomes 2 lanes. So the issue with folks on Gilman and Clark Streets was they were being blocked because of the heavy traffic on Route 5 from entering Northampton Street. So the hope was, this is 15 years ago, that by making the do not block the box signs and painting the street, and then getting people hopefully accustomed to going straight through the intersection at Whiting Farms, that would alleviate the traffic congestion in that immediate area.
Okay, so we've got the do not block the box painting on the road now. It seems to be generally paid attention to, in my experience. I drive down there all the time. So if there's no trouble with people making the right and then making a left, in terms of the flow of traffic, never mind blocking the 2 side streets, I get that part. But it seems like we did 2 different solutions to try and address that, one of which is working.
Bingo.
So assuming that we're not blocking those 2 side streets, in your traffic design opinion, collectively you guys, is it okay to allow people to take that right and then take an immediate left? Because moving the driveway further away from that intersection, I don't think it's really feasible. Doesn't the bank climb almost immediately?
There's a grade change there, and then we get closer to the sandwich shop there,
D'Angelo's, yeah.
And I don't think we need to change the driveway. It gets complicated, it's expensive. I don't remember that there was ever a real problem with left-turning cars queuing up and backing up into that intersection. It's a pretty clear turn
Okay.
to make, and obviously it's convenient because people continue to do it illegally twice.
This is all predicate
once
on
every 2
Kmart staying
minutes.
in business, which is not a really good business proposition to base everything on, but
So that's
Thank you.
exactly, so I've been saying for a while now, that let's just go with the flow on this. Let's make a dedicated left-hand lane. I'm suggesting that there, in my untrained eye, that there's plenty of room, because there's a huge breakdown lane on Whiting Farms Road. So I'm suggesting that with what the city did for mall traffic farther up Whiting Farms Road, to take away the breakdown lane and to make a dedicated lane for just right-hand turns going onto Lower Westfield Road. That was a wonderful idea by Ward 5 Councilor Brunel, if I remember. I think he was in office at the time. Councilor McGivern, too. Thanks, Councilor McGivern. So these are, I'm not a historian, Joe, but I appreciate you bringing it up. But Councilor McGivern deserves plenty of credit there, too. And the residents up that area as well brought it to John and Joe's attention. So I'm suggesting, Gordon, that okay, if it's not exactly 100% by the engineering standards, there's ample room otherwise to make a left-hand lane for turning into Kmart Plaza and to have a dedicated lane going straight up to Whiting Farms and to the mall.
then we don't need to wait for any response from the property owner, because we're not impacting their intersection
Well,
significantly.
we would be, in my opinion, we would be, it's on their property. I sounds, in my conversation with Bill in the past, that bizarre-looking traffic island that's ignored is on Sears Holding Company's property. So I don't know if we can just,
we installed it, and I think we installed it with the agreement of the property owner at the time. And I just think it's a courtesy to let them know that we're gonna be altering and meddling in the driveway to their business. It's more of a courtesy than anything. It more than likely is within our right of way.
Let's go ahead and do it and leave it to Bill to get a hold of the property owner and make it happen.
well, I'd like to get a recommendation from Bill and Yem as to what, I mean, I'm throwing it out as a,
Well,
I'm no engineer.
Well, there's a difference between allowing for the left into the driveway and creating a dedicated left turn lane, so.
I was going to comment on that second point. I would, it worked properly without a dedicated painted lane. It is plenty of room there, as Councilor Bartley noted. I just let it be and let them queue and turn and do what they always did before without painting more paint on the road.
No, even
I
better, sure.
I can't keep up with the paint that we have to put down now.
Okay.
If we can do it without a dedicated lane.
Well, I just thought
at
this for
point,
safety
save time.
purposes, Bill. That was the only reason
No, I agree. I hear you. If there is a concern, I think we can always add one, but I just let it be and let traffic go where it wants to go.
So if I may, Dave. So what I'm hearing then is the engineers at DPW's recommendation is tear out the island and just smooth it over so that, and that's it. That's your recommendation? Motion to adopt the recommendation.
Oh, I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded to,
Ultimately, the illegal left turn ordinance would have to be rescinded, but I wouldn't do that until we were able to remove the island and
Good idea,
and
Bill.
make it proper. 'Cause basically, if you remove the ordinance now, you're saying, go ahead and
Oh,
hit that
yeah. Oh,
island.
there's an ordinance.
no left turn, yeah.
Positively, there's an ordinance.
So, my recommendation
There's an
then,
ordinance.
my recommendation is going to be to table so that we can get rid of the, they can't act on removing the no left turn without our adoption or deletion, in this case, of the ordinance that's there.
Madam Chair? I can file a separate order. to leave that ordinance, that ordinance is staying in place until Bill and Yem do what they have to do with Sears Holding Corp. So I say, let's act on the motion that Gordon made, and, because we're under discussion right now, let's act on the motion that Gordon made, and then when Bill so advises, I will file another,
To Bill's point.
or somebody will file, Joe, somebody will file, it, whatever happens, so.
The island's there, because then people can make the left turn over the island. So we have to get the island out before we change the ordinance. So let's get rid of the island under the existing order.
Yeah, I just felt that,
Let us know, we'll take care of it.
that Bill could move forward on removing the island without having us adopt anything, and we would,
adopt this, just not change the ordinance.
sure. So we'll file a separate order for the no left turn only to be removed.
Yes, at the time, right time.
Okay, so this motion has been made and seconded to adopt the recommendation of the engineer that we remove the
Obstacle course.
the island at the entrance exit of Kmart Plaza on Whiting Farms Road. All in favor?
All right,
So moved.
I think that was 1-0.
Sorry. Aye.
Okay.
Item number 4 is filed by Councilor Alexander, that the DPW install signs on Nonotuck at Allen.
Say stop signs. Lost a stop.
Stop signs on Allen, on Nonotuck at Allen and on Allen, eastbound at the corner of Waldo Street. All in favor to take this up?
All right,
So moved. Under discussion, Councilor Alexander.
Again, is he coming back?
No.
Is it on hold? Are we on hold, or can we keep going?
No, we can keep going.
Okay.
I saw that.
I've included the traffic study. We performed traffic counts, site assessments, look at accident reports. Again, the recommendation is at the, page 1, is to install 4 all-way stop sign at the intersection of Nonotuck and Allen, and also at the intersection of Allen and
Motion to adopt the engineer's recommendation. Thank you.
second.
Under discussion.
Under
Okay.
discussion.
I believe Allen goes to one-way at Waldo,
Nonotuck.
Nonotuck.
Nonotuck. So that won't be full.
it'll be on all-way stops.
Doesn't apply.
Correct.
But other than that, thank you. Motion to adopt.
Second.
Yem, do you want to say anything else about this, or is it self-explanatory based on your
no.
notes?
We argued about it in the office already.
Yeah. And
I
also,
didn't want Gordon to get off so easy. We figured we'd come in and fight about it tonight, but he made it easy.
Yem, did you want to say something else, or no?
no, that's it. And it would include, crosswalks, at these intersections.
Paintings?
It's adequate,
The curb cuts.
there are ADA ramps, there.
Great. So motion has been made and seconded to adopt the engineer's report that we install 4-way stop signs and all-way stop signs at the intersection of Allen and Nonotuck, as well as the intersection of Allen and Waldo. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
The the stop signs and stop bars can be put in this fall. The crosswalks I just heard about, so they probably won't get in until spring. Painting them.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Motion to take up number 7, Madam Chair?
Motion made and seconded to take up item number 7. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Order that the DPW install blinking crosswalk lights at the corner of Nonotuck and Lincoln as soon as possible. Is there somebody here who Councilor Mickey has spoken to about this intersection?
Well, do we have, I mean, Bill, do we have blinking sidewalk?
Crosswalk.
Crosswalk lights? Anywhere? I mean, they have them at Holyoke College, they look
No,
great up there, but.
the only crosswalk lights that we have are on Appleton Street at the elderly towers and on South Street at the towers. Those are the only crosswalk lighting signaling that we have.
And the one on South Street's gonna get upgraded soon, that's just not the
And-
best
and
situation.
This sounds like it's a different kind of light, similar to what you're starting to see around,
Con Street, I know, has one across from there.
By the elderly tower or whatever.
It's not the tower, it's like the,
It's not Falchetti Towers right there?
it's the one that's next to the Gazette.
Yeah.
That's Falsetti Towers?
Yeah, which is senior housing or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you tend to see these wherever there's sort of heavy foot traffic because of some specific local condition. You have a lot of foot traffic there, a school or powerful residence or something.
How much does a signalized crosswalk like that cost?
$3,000 to $4,000.
Well, your estimates, I think, are a little bit lower than what, why am I blanking on his name? Matt used to come in here with $5,000 was the
$5,000. Well, that
ballpark,
was on the tip of
ballpark
my
figure for
tongue.
everything.
That's
Well, then to
that's
then
what things
to
cost
maintain,
now.
I mean, that would be my estimate too, that,
5,000?
if you look at prevailing wage rate, union rate and all that, but, I mean, you can,
Even despite the fact that it's not the signalization that has the street, the floor lighting, it has only the blinking signals on either side, it's still gonna cost about 5,000?
Still got to run conduit and put poles and
Okay.
tie into the power wherever it is.
I think they have solar powered,
Yes, I've seen that as well. Yeah, the solar powered ones.
that's still not cheap.
well, I mean, I just, the maker of the order's not here. I'm gonna make a motion to table this until he comes in and he can tell us more about it. I mean, I don't,
Sure, and I'll make a point to talk to him before the 10th.
All right, motion has been made and seconded to table this item. All in favor?
all right,
So moved.
Motion to take up item number 8.
8 and 9 as a package, please.
Motion to take up 8 and 9 as package.
Motion
second,
to suspend the necessary rules, take up 8 and 9 as a package. All in favor?
all right.
So moved. They're both related to Donley Street. In Councilor Bacon's order for number 8, she writes that no overnight parking signs be placed in front of 5 Donley and across from 5 Donley per request of the residents. And Leahy says that we post residential parking only, and just wanted to bring it forward for discussion. I'm really unfamiliar with the issue that's over there. Council Bartley seems to be clued in, so
Yeah,
Council Bartley under discussion.
I'm very familiar with it, and I'm just gonna make a brief comment, then I'm gonna make a motion to table both of these. The property is under agreement to be sold. It's a matter of days, if not just a couple weeks, to get this done and get this into a reputable builder's hands, who's going to take care of the numerous issues. So before we start, I did get Councilor Bacon's email, we all did. I just didn't have a chance to respond to it, and I didn't want to do it offline, I wanted to do it on the microphone. So, I'm just involved with it on the legal end, so if, I would just ask the discretion of the committee to table this to, and then we can maybe take it back up, probably at our next ordinance meeting, and I think the property be transferred by then.
I'll second the motion to table. Can we, in the interim, maybe just shoot a request to the police to maybe take an extra swing through there periodically, if that helps?
And I'll say this, Councilor Alexander, because you weren't on the microphone about police going through there, I certainly don't mind that at all. The property owner is well aware of what's going on. The owner's been notified by the building commissioner's done a darn good job with this. The Board of Health has done a darn good job with this. They both are have been fully apprised as to the pendency of this sale. But they've dotted and crossed whatever they need to do, and they're on top of it, and they're aware that I'm suggesting to you by the middle of November at the latest, this property be transferred, and then the issue will be cleaned up. I made the motion to table.
Motion has been made and seconded to table. All in favor?
All right.
So moved. 8 and 9 are tabled because we took them up as a package. 11.
Oh, that's our last one.
Yep.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
All right.
So moved. This is filed by Councilor Bartley that the city engineer assess installation of a mid-block crosswalk across Hillside at Coit. This area is being used as a bus stop.
Yeah,
Under
so-
discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope I laid out the order pretty well. I hope people, oh, I know, that one's got a little jog on it too, Bill.
You want to show me where you're thinking of?
Oh, sure, yeah.
It really isn't a mid, it's not really a mid-block situation, but this is Coit and Hillside.
So, crosswalk, right there or right there, either one.
We were looking at here, and right now we've got handicap ramps here and here and here and here, so you can take this.
Beautiful.
Doesn't need an ordinance, though. That's, not for a crosswalk.
So can somebody just rehash that conversation into the microphone because I think we all missed it as you were looking at the map together.
Especially about the part about the ordinance. Okay, so I'm gonna, Bill, I'm gonna describe it as best I can, but just before we get there, to have a crosswalk, Bill, I'm sorry, I thought we had to have an ordinance.
I think not if it's an intersection, but if it's not actually mid-block, technically.
Bill?
I wasn't aware we need an ordinance for a mid-block crosswalk. This is the first I've heard of it, so, no.
I'm
Not-
really just making that up.
No. It's because of the Blessed Sacrament crosswalk. That's what came up.
Don't get me going to Blessed Sacrament crosswalk, I got, but that's something that has come up on South Street before.
Yeah,
You're right,
yeah,
Counselor
you're right.
Alexander, you got a
That one
good,
as
you got a
well.
darn good memory. In this case, what Bill and Yem have come up with is if it can be implemented, is a darn good compromise,
Which
I
is,
think.
can you just state it into the record?
Well, we're just questioning which crossing, there's a crossing here at Hillside and Coit that could be easily installed. There's already handicap ramps at those corners, and we can connect them with a painted crosswalk in the street
Yeah, that sounds great.
across Hillside. So
And
that,
Bill,
And you're talking about
Bill,
a
keep that-
school bus stop, right?
Well, the school bus stops.
Right before it.
Yeah, if you, Bill, hold up that map so Rebecca and Gordon can see it. So, and the school block stops, here,
On the uphill side.
Hillside's
Yes.
running this
Yeah.
way.
the school bus stops here, almost directly in front of where Coit Street is.
But after Coit Street, it passes, it doesn't block the intersection.
Yeah,
So it goes just past.
right inside this pocket right here.
Yeah.
So the little guys are hopping off and, they're zigzagging all over the street. And
Yeah, we
it
can-
stops on the other side.
They stop on the other side of the street.
So just after Coit Street, just before Coit Street.
And we can cross right here.
No, not two.
No, 'cause you have to-
It's an
yeah.
L shape.
Yeah, there you can cross, I'm trying to see my shadow,
Yeah.
Right here.
cross here and here.
So right here from, this,
Where's the second one?
there's three. There's gonna be one right here.
Yeah.
That's this part of Coit Street. A second one right here about this part of Coit Street. And a third one across Hillside Avenue.
Yeah.
Motion to adopt the engineer's recommendation. Do you know you made that recommendation?
Good job
Any other discussion?
Can I?
doing this
Please.
next time. by yourself.
So I'm going to second Gordon's motion, I really appreciate. And just for the committee, and I really hope we get to this point, because we do have the order filed, and you were nice enough to take it up, Rebecca, and I'd like to take it up, at your pleasure, it's not a life-changing thing. But if you notice where the Coit Street kind of has a little jog part, and Bill and I have discussed this numerous times, and now I've had the opportunity to meet with the tenants and to speak with the property owner. That part of Coit Street on the east side where it jogs over, I filed an order to change that to East Coit Street for the purposes of making it more efficient for public safety vehicles, for letter carriers and that sort of thing. The resident and the homeowner, offline, I don't have anything official, of course, but we will, are very much in favor of it. So I just want to bring that to your attention because you're going to be voting on this down the road. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded to adopt the engineer's recommendation that we paint crosswalks on both sides of Coit Street and along Hillside between Coit.
On Coit, on both sides of Hillside. And on Hillside.
As described by
As described by
superintendent.
the superintendent.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yep.